Hey, friends.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, friends.
And welcome
Welcome
to
back
It's a Sign. Hey,
It's a Sign.
you don't know what the podcast is. Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode where It's a Sign. And today, we're going to be exploring the notion of lost continents. And many of us know about the mythical Atlantis, some even the land of Mu and Lemuria. But lesser known is the mystical hidden continent of Aztlan. So sit back, relax, and let us take you on a journey to the mythical lost continent of the ancient Aztecs.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to the podcast. It's a Sign. Thanks for joining us today. We are back in our familiar setting that is our beautiful home here in the south of France. If you are watching on YouTube, but if you are listening, you can just use your imagination.
We've got a new friend in the background.
New addition, a couple of new additions in the background. We have the Bast Egyptian cat goddess and this beautiful dragon skeleton.
His name is...
And this orb.
Oh yeah, his name is Creppy.
Creppy.
No.
I like that name. It
up.
makes sense because we're in France and the French do enjoy a crepe.
Hey, wow. Pulling two and two together.
Yes.
It's so great to be back. We're really just coming back onto the land. And
Yeah, we're buzzing.
we're
We're
buzzing
high.
with the energy.
We're high, being back in the garden, beautiful weather, already extremely hot, even though it's only the start of spring, which is a little frightening.
Yeah, and we're literally just touching our feet on this soil for like a couple weeks, and then we're off again. We're going to be quite ungrounded for the next 3-4 months. But we're doing our best to keep up with everything. And today we have a really cool episode. And honestly, in the beginning, I was planning on covering 3 lost continents. But as I started with this one, I began to find more and more. And so today's episode is going to be completely on the lost continent of Aztlan. And this comes from the Mesoamerican side of the world, from the Nahuatl people, the Aztecs, and eventually the Mexican people. And this is the mythical homeland of the Aztecs, where the Aztecs came from. And as we dive into it, we'll begin to see a lot of similarities to other myths of lost continents as well. So I'm excited to dive into it because I had never heard of this place before. And I've been to Mexico. I've studied some of the myths, and obviously I didn't go that deep into it. But yeah, it's really cool for me to find and stumble across new myths and legends, and especially when they begin to have like these crossovers and similarities.
Yeah, I think most of us are just familiar with Atlantis as being a lost continent and pretty much, and Lemuria, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is going to be exciting to learn about a complete new one. And I definitely do believe in the idea or the concept of lost continents, and because we do see how much over long periods of time our home planet Earth has changed and morphed a lot.
Definitely. Yeah, we've covered a lot of different things, including fish bones found in the peaks of the Himalayan mountains, to underground cities and the sinking city of Shambhala and all of that. And so today I've dove in and explored a couple books and articles, and according to Miguel Leon Portilla, who wrote the book Aztec Thought and Culture, a study of the ancient Nahuatl mind, he accounts an Aztec myth. And in this myth, there was an ancient city called Aztlan, and it was said to be located beyond the north wind and beyond the desert, and it was surrounded by water. The author explains that Aztlan was envisioned as a lush and fertile land with plenty of water and vegetation, and the Aztecs believed that Aztlan was a place of harmony and balance, where humans and nature lived in perfect harmony. So, where is the author getting these ideas from? A lot of things are spoken through word of mouth, especially in these ancient cultures, but there's one source text that kind of brings all of this together, and it is known as the Codex Chimalpopoca. Chimalpopoca.
Cool.
Popocoa. No, Popoca. So within it, the codex is split into several different sections, but the first section is known as the creation myth. And it describes the creation of the world according to Aztec mythology. And it begins with the creation of the four Tetzaltlicocas gods. There's going to be a lot of words I'm not going to pronounce, because especially Native American, Indigenous, Mexican, and words are really complicated. They have all these combinations of letterings and
you can't know exactly how they pronounce stuff.
So in
but the pronouncing thing reminded me of when we were in the pharmacy the other day.
Oh yeah.
And I was like trying to buy ibuprofen.
Yeah.
And the woman just didn't understand it all, and I just turned to Trey like, help me. And then
because we're in France, everything's pronounced differently. So even though it's so similar,
the same word.
She says ibuprofen, but they don't understand it.
Yeah.
Like, what? And I'm like, ibuprofen. And she's like,
She knew straight away. So it's crazy. The exact same spelling, but it's like pronounced completely different.
Yeah.
Sorry about that interruption.
So let me just get this set into my brain. Tezcatlipoca. Tezcatlipoca. Got it. So in the Aztec religion, Tezcatlipoca was an important god. He was involved in the earth's creation, commanded jaguars, oversaw sacrifices, and presided over the night sky. It's important to note that oftentimes in the modern mind, we translate these deific beings as gods. It's impossible to say whether the ancient people actually saw them as gods, or if they were, like the ancient Egyptians, referring to these as universal principles and cosmic forces, and making them into metaphors and symbols to understand. By my idea of it, it seems very similar to what the Egyptians were doing with their netters. But for all point and purpose, we will call them gods. Sometimes he was shown as a partner in creation, but more often he was shown as a god of judgment and destruction. According to Aztec cosmology, he had been responsible for destroying the world 4 times before the current age of mankind began. And this is something that someone could easily pass over, but I find it very interesting because the notion that a people believed and have carried on the knowledge that there were potentially 4 epochs of humanity before even their ancient time. So it's this notion that the world is, it's a crazy place where this giant sphere floating in space, and there's all sorts of cosmic events, comets, meteors, shifts in solar activity, there's floods, there's earthquakes, cataclysms, and who knows what civilizations existed and what was wiped out. So it's very interesting that they say that four times, that they're very specific about that. But this god is very rarely seen in art, and he often has a missing leg, but it refers to this cosmic force of kind of destruction and kind of chaos that ends up birthing into a new world. So Tezcatlipoca is sometimes described as an invisible god. This is not because of any supernatural power, but because he is so rarely seen in surviving images from the Aztec culture. Tezcatlipoca served many different functions, so he was depicted in similarly diverse ways. Most often, the god is associated with the creation of the world, and many different myths existed to explain this. He's usually described as the brother of one of the greatest creation gods, Quetzalcoatl. There were 2 of the 4 sons of the Ometecutl and the Lord and Lady who had created all the gods and the first humans. So, in one version of the creation story, the 2 worked together to create the world. Before they created the land, all that existed was the sea. In it lived a monstrous reptile known as Chipactli. The brothers needed to capture Chipactli to make her body into the land, and Tezcatlipoca used his foot as bait, so he can sometimes be identified in art because his missing foot is replaced with smoking obsidian, a bone, or a snake. In a story that seems to have been more widespread, however, Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl were rivals, and this is known as the legend of the 5 sons. And the 5 sons is important to note because it will come up later in the legend of Aztlan, the lost continent. But I think it's important to just go into a little bit of the creation story and kind of the codex before we get into this lost continent. Tezcatlipoca turned himself into a jaguar and ripped the world apart. The first age, called the Son of the Earth, or the Jaguar Sun, was destroyed. Quetzalcoatl then became the sun himself. He was overthrown by Tezcatlipoca, who saw that the people who lived under Quetzalcoatl were animalistic and uncivilized. He turned these people into monkeys, which Quetzalcoatl blew from the earth with a great wind. This was the second son, the son of the wind. After this, Tlaloc, the god of rain, became the sun. Tezcatlipoca stole Tlaloc's wife, and the rain god was so distraught that he caused a drought. When the people of the world begged him to send rain, Tlaloc grew so annoyed that he sent a rain of fire to kill them all.
Savage.
Yeah. So I think this is all very similar to what we hear in a lot of different ancient cultures. They use storytelling and personify the forces of nature because that's how people remember things. Yeah. In an oral culture, you turn things into stories that can be told around a fire and passed on from generation to generation. When I think of a rain of fire, I do think of comets, streaking across the sky. The gods made a new world from the ashes, ending the sun of rain, which was the third sun. The only people who survived this sun became birds, who could go into the air to escape the burning earth. Tlaloc's new wife, the kindly water goddess, oh god, that is a crazy name, Chalchiuhliqui, became the son of water, and that is the fourth son. Tezcatlipoca accused her of faking this kindness, however, and I'm just going to call her the water goddess, was so hurt by this accusation that she cried for 52 years. It's very specific, They didn't say she cried for 100 years, or it's like 52 years. So it's really marking the passage of time. Mm-hmm. So if there's huge rainfalls and floods for 52 years, the world was inundated by the flood her tears caused, and the people became fish to survive. The Aztecs believed that they lived under the fifth sun, Huitzilopochtli. They continued to give sacrifices to Tezcatlipoca to prevent him from once again judging the sun and the people who lived under it to be unworthy. If that happened, they believed, then Huitzilopochtli would become the son of earthquakes. Tezcatlipoca would use earthquakes to destroy the world, while Tzitzme, the jealous stars, killed their brother. So there's a lot of names and things like that. But the importance is that they're marking these stages of time, and that there were people who adapted and shifted during the ages.
Or were they people? Because they was jaguars and monkeys and fish.
Yeah, I think it represents different, because they use like...
Because they say we came from fish originally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's true. Could be that it's marking the passages of a very long time, but based on like the very specific segments of time, it almost seems like there were people around.
They could be, but they could have also channeled it.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
They could have spiritually channeled it and, you know, found out the history of Earth that way and seen in visions like the cycles that
Definitely.
happened.
Yeah, because these people were very connected with the dreams, and I really want to do an episode on the Nahuatl people and the mystical powers of the shamans, and their spirituality all revolves around the notion of the dream time and the dream world. So, very possible. I also know about the Aztecs is that they were very heavily centered around animal imagery. So if they became fish, they became the jaguar, they became the monkeys, what do those animals represent to them? Because I know in a quite, you know, one of the more recent Aztec epochs, there were these famous warriors. There was two. It was the jaguar warrior, and they would wear jaguar skins and everything like that, and they were quite ferocious. And then the others were the golden eagle warriors. So, and they were always depicted with these incredible headdresses and things like that. So it's possible as well that the metaphors of men turning to monkeys could have been men losing their consciousness, men devolving for an epoch, and then men turning to fish. You know, it's just the adaptation of each epoch could be. But yeah, so this is the legend of the suns, and it describes the 5 suns or ages of the world that precedes the current one. Each sun had a different creation and destruction story, and the current sun is believed to be the 5th sun, the one that we're in now. And the codex...
The earthquake.
I think so.
That was the earthquake sun, the 5th.
The 5th.
Yeah.
So it must... Yeah, so I'm not sure if... So maybe they believe that earthquakes is going to be the next cycle. I'm not sure. But at the end of each cycle, there's a period of chaos and destruction into which the new sun is born.
Yeah, it's formed by the whatever that god or goddess is ruling. So you had the goddess of water, and then it was her tears that caused the floods that ended that cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it like kind of could make sense of the earthquake god, because if you think like right now we're in a time where we are fracking the earth, you know, disrupting the ground. We're pulling up all, like, do we really know like the consequence of pulling all the oil deep from under the earth? Is that oil not there for a reason? The gas and the oil, you know, like what will be the consequence of that once there's certain areas where it's actually run out, where we've drained it of that? So that was there for a reason. And you know, we're in an industrial stage where we're pumping those things from the ground, and like that could well end in some kind of earth-shattering event. Yeah. So it kind of could make sense. Like we're definitely doing stuff that is, you know, tampering deep underground and changing what's going on under there, and that could backfire on us. Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, we used to be all one continent, and the entire, you know, we've broken up. You know, the world can change so much. And I'm not sure if the earthquake marked the transition from the 4th into the 5th, or if it's going to mark the 5th into the 6th. I know that I think it was like 13,000 BC around then, which was the marking of the transition between the 4th into the 5th sun.
Is that like the Ice Age?
Yeah, that's right, towards the end of the Ice Age. So that does make sense in alignment with the tears of the water goddess. because we know that there were great amounts of glacial flooding around that time and the end of the Ice Age. So anyway, moving on, the rest of the Codex Codex Chimalpopoca reveals historical accounts of the Aztec people, such as the migration of the Mexica people to the Valley of Mexico and their eventual establishment of the Aztec Empire. There's religious practices and beliefs and some social and cultural practices. But we're going to focus on this episode primarily on the historical accounts and the migration from the ancient homeland of the Mexica people. And we begin to realize that the Mexica people did not originate in Mexico and that area, but migrated from the lost continent of Aztlan. So within the Codex, it is described that the gods created humanity and sent them to Aztlan to live. However, the people of Aztlan became corrupt and were punished by the gods with natural disasters, such as earthquakes, floods, and forcing them to flee their homeland. The myth described Aztlan as a land of 7 caves, where the Aztecs lived for a long time before being driven out by a catastrophic flood. The people of Aztlan were said to have been guided by a god named Huitzilopochtli, who instructed them to seek out a new homeland in the south. And already there's incredible parallels between Noah's Ark and the Sumerian flood myth. In the Sumerian flood myth, it was Enki who told the people of ancient Sumer to build a boat, and in Noah's Ark it was God. But according to the Codex, one of the oldest and most significant records of Aztec mythology, the story begins with the gods who created the 4 previous suns, and before the Aztecs could fulfill their destiny as the chosen people, they had to undertake a long and perilous journey to reach their new home. This journey began in the legendary land of Aztlan, a place that was said to be located in the north beyond the 7 caves. The Aztecs, led by their god, left Aztlan and embarked on a journey that lasted generations. So this wasn't just a quick boat ride or plane trip. This was a multi-generation. People lived and died on this journey. It was a big one. They encountered many obstacles along the way, including fierce enemies, treacherous landscapes, hunger, and thirst. But they persevered, and finally, after many years of wandering, they reached the Valley of Mexico. Once they arrived, the Aztecs found that the land was already inhabited by other peoples. However, they were determined to establish their own civilization and began building their capital, Tenochtitlan. They also formed alliances with other people in the region and eventually became one of the most powerful empires in the Americas. One of the stories included in the Codex is a version of the flood myth, which tells of a great deluge that destroyed the world. According to the myth, the gods were displeased with the humans of the 4th sun, who had become too proud and had stopped worshipping the gods. In order to punish them, the gods decided to send a flood to destroy the world. However, they also wanted to save 1 man and 1 woman who would be the ancestors of the next era of humanity. The god Tlaloc, who is associated with water and rain, was chosen to bring the flood. They sent rain for 52 years until the whole earth was covered in water. The only survivors were a man named Coxcox, also known as Tespi, and his wife with a crazy name, and various animals who had taken refuge in a hollowed out tree. After the flood receded, Coxcox and his wife, who had been turned into a dove by the gods, landed on the top of a mountain called Colhuacan. They had many children who were sent out to repopulate the earth, and the new era of humanity was called the 5th sun. The dove keeps appearing it appears in the Sumerian and the Bible, and now here. And also in Noah's Ark, it lands on the top of a mountain. So it's crazy similar to see these cultures that are apparently didn't have anything to do with one another shares all these common stories, and it's really become like I still don't believe how many archaeologists and scientists are like not believing that there was some sort of civilization before, with all these different cultures telling about a flood that disrupt their civilization, you know? It's crazy to me.
Yeah, it is. And I wonder what the dove could symbolize. You know, what is that symbolizing? And again, for me, it really does go back to deep spirituality of the people, and like it feels like they're all channeling the same kind of message, because how do we, like you say, from such different cultures and people in all different times, you know, coming up with a very similar story.
Yeah. So, as we said before, we are in the fifth sun within the cyclical view of time and history. And it is said that the sun we're in now is called Nahui Olin. And the sun was created after the gods sacrificed themselves to give rise to a new era. Each sun was said to have a specific destiny for the humans within it. So it's very, very cool to think about that we are all, as a collective humanity, striving towards a specific destiny. It kind of gives a little bit of hope, you know, in the world that, and you see a lot of these new movements, and there is a documentary called The Sixth Sun, and it speaks of these ancient Native American prophecies, and the prophecies are warriors and people from all over the world will come together in the tribe of the rainbow to create the new world of the heart. And it's the world of the heart, and you're really kind of seeing it unfold before our very eyes right now, you know?
Definitely. Like with what a lot of people in the spiritual movement or the New Age movement will be aware of, we have now the crystal and rainbow children coming in after, you know, the generation of the indigos, who really like made way for these very sensitive crystal children and rainbow children to be a lot more sensitive. You know, they're much more connected to the heart. And then you see, you know, with the PC culture and everything, you know, certain you know, the way everyone is, it's like some things are just not okay anymore because people have become a lot more sensitive, and I think that is connecting to the heart a lot more. So I feel like you can see it, and you see a lot of people, you know, a lot more people going plant-based and vegan, and this being, you know, encouraged by their sensitivity to other beings other than the self, which is the animals. And yeah, I just think you can definitely see the world becoming a lot more heart-centered. And of course, there's still, you know, a lot of darkness, and, you know, we live in duality, but there is a lot more heartfelt, sensitive people and spiritual people, and people connecting with that, whether they grew up in religion or not. They're finding this connection with nature, with the earth, with God themselves.
Yeah, even just, you know, so many different young people, including us, moving out to the country, and, you know, to really be present, and one with, you know, just the food we eat and the creation, and recentering with nature. That in itself is a movement. It's moving away from the city, which can often be cold and
desensitizing.
Yeah, cold in heart. I mean, not physically cold.
Yeah.
So, yeah, many people are curious about whether this is a real place that is Aztlan. Is it a myth, or is it like, the mythical land of Atlantis or Camelot or all these stories, but it's hard, it's impossible to prove for now. But we do have some descriptions and some notions around the land, and I even believe that Atlantis and Camelot, especially Camelot, have had personal experiences. Camelot's the home of like King Arthur and all of that, and the mysterious island of Avalon, which we believe to be in Glastonbury, and anyone who's been to Glastonbury can, it's steeped in that ancient culture and ancient belief that it was once an island. So even the city of Troy was believed to be mythical until they actually excavated and found the proof that it was real. But I did want to correct myself. Before I said 13,000 BC, but the Mesoamerican long count calendar began on August 11th, 3114 BC, which was believed to be the start of the current creation cycle of the fifth sun. So the transition between the fourth must have been back when all the flood was happening, and then the fifth started in 3114 BC. So before we get into what Aztlan was like, we have to kind of go into the notion of the 7 tribes. So the formation of civilization at Aztlan comes from the legend that according to Nahuatl people, there were 7 tribes that once lived at Chico-Moztoc, the place of the 7 caves. And it's interesting that the number 7 keeps coming up. It appears in most ancient mythology.
In numerology,
even in the Bible.
It is the most spiritual number.
Yeah.
And it's the number of knowledge.
So there were 7 Nahuatl groups. All have complicated names. So I'm not going to try and pronounce all of them. Though one of them was the Mexica people. And these 7 groups were of similar linguistic characteristics, but they left their respective caves and settled as one group near Aztlan. According to some accounts, the 7 groups' arrival at Aztlan was preceded by the arrival of a group known as the Chichimecas, who were considered to be less civilized than the 7 Nahua groups. And civilized could be another word for advanced. The Mexica were the last group to travel to Aztlan and may have been slowed down due to a lengthy drought between 1100 AD and 1300 AD. So here is an unusual map drawn up in 1704, drawn by Giovanni Francesco, and it's the first published representation of the legendary Aztec migration from Aztlan, a mysterious paradise somewhere to the northwest of Mexico. And it kind of depicts their journey, and I'll put it up big for everyone to see.
So it was in Mexico?
Northwest of Mexico.
Okay.
They say beyond the north wind, surrounded by water. So it's unsure if it was like a place, like a small continent in the ocean or something like that. Northwest of Mexico. So Mexico is here, somewhere off that way. So what was Aztlan like? According to the stories and legends, the homeland of Aztlan was a splendid place filled with luxury situated on a large lake. The people who lived there were immortal and were very happy in their land of abundance. In the middle of the lake, there was a large hill named Colhuacan, which housed the 7 caves. In these 7 caves were the ancestors of the Aztecs, along with an unexpectedly large number of ducks, herons, and waterfowl that sang consistently. Beautiful fish swam in the waters, and shade was provided by the trees on the banks. The people here fished and tended their gardens, which floated on the lake. They grew maize, peppers, beans, and tomatoes. And other than the cataclysm, and and they were forced to leave because of the cataclysm. And weeds began to scratch them, rocks wounded them, and the fields turned from lush crops to thistles and spines. Whilst they began to wander, they came across poisonous lizards and dangerous animals until finally they reached the Tenochtitlan, where they would found a great city. In the Codex, Aztlan was a place where the Aztecs were subject to the Azteca Chicomzotoca, the tyrannical elite. To escape the Chicomzotoca, the Aztecs fled Aztlan. So this is another version of the myth, led by their priest. In the legend, the god told them they could not use the name Azteca and they would be known as Mexica. And the Aztec migration from Aztlan to Tenochtitlan is a very important piece of Aztec history. So here is actually a way to pronounce it. So it's Huitzilopochtli. What the?
How the?
Huitzilopochtli. It's spelt so differently.
Yeah, it's spelled with a H. Yeah.
It's called Huitzilopochtli. And meaning hummingbird on the left, was one of the most important of the Aztec gods. Huh? Lee.
Oh yeah, there's Lee.
Yeah, so he was the god of the sun, warfare, military conquest, and sacrifice. And according to tradition, this led the Mexica people from Aztlan, their mythical homeland, into central Mexico. And according to some scholars, Huitzilopochtli could have been a historical figure, probably a priest or advanced being who was transformed into a god after his death, made immortal through myth and story. But it coincides with a bunch of different other myths where there was this man who led what? What?
Nothing.
What?
I thought you was gonna air quote.
I avoided that one. We talked about how I often use air quotes by accident. And when I'm editing and I go back and
Sorry, I
see
really
myself.
interrupted your flow,
No,
but
don't worry.
it just caught me because I thought that you was about to do it and I did not laugh. Sorry. We love Trey's air quotes, so don't stop.
I don't. Yeah.
So when they reached Mexico.
Yeah. So here's another little depiction of their...
That's cute.
Yeah. This is the Aztlan in the center and them going on a boat. It's probably quite simplified because... but it does look like it's surrounded by a landmass. But it did sink, so I'm not sure what this would be. Maybe a lot of this land got submerged in water, and maybe there was a whole branch of landmass off the
Where is that during? It doesn't look very
coast.
ancient.
No, it was created by the Aztecs in the 16th century, before the West came to Mexico. Yeah, so some say that Aztlan was actually not an island on the sea, but an island upon a lake. And while scholars have made many attempts to locate Aztlan in hopes of finding the place where the Aztecs, later known as the Mexica, originated, some have argued that the search for Atlantis and the search for Aztlan are one and the same, as these are simply two different names for the same land. However, this has been disputed, and many scholars searching for Aztlan believe it to be a separate land from the lost city of Atlantis, specifically because the geography differs very much from Plato's account of where Atlantis was said to be. One big mystery surrounding Aztlan is exactly how far north the area would have been located. With searches extending all the way up into Utah, it is possible that the Aztecs did not originate in Mexico at all, but that their culture was formed in an area that is now the United States, prior to their migration to the area now known as the Valley of Mexico. And some have argued that if this were true, descendants of the Aztecs who are in the United States today may try to assert that they are not undocumented migrants, but descendants of the Aztecs who are merely returning to their homeland. And here's a depiction of the 7 caves.
So cool. It looks like a tree.
Yeah.
Like a really cool tree.
But it's another kind of depiction of like an inner earth. It looks like it's within the earth. There's some people up there.
Well, they said they're caves, so
Yeah.
kind of is a inner earth.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories that and it could be that the people were in the earth hiding from the floods and the ice age, and then they came out when it was time. So
yeah, which is a reason why humans go underground and create underground cities or bunkers, and then it makes you think, are we on the cusp of another one of these endings, because we have a lot of billionaires and millionaires buying into underground bunkers right now.
Yeah.
People who build underground bunkers, I've seen interviews with these people and they can't keep up with demand. Why are these rich people buying up all these underground bunkers? What do they know that we don't know?
Yeah, it's true. It's like we see it in Turkey with Daring Kuyu and the underground cities, which we did an episode on the ancient underground cities that survived the last ice age. And you see these underground cities built to survive something. And it's very strange that all these millionaires are now buying up these underground bunkers. And you can see how history continues to repeat itself in different ways throughout the ages.
Like a replenishing of the earth, right?
Yeah. Okay, so here's interesting point. So Mexico began making a list of pueblos mágicos, which I think literally translates, with my bad Spanish, to magic beaches or magic places. And they listed a small and unique town, which is actually not known to many people throughout Mexico. Its formal name is Mezcalititlan de Uribe, usually shortened to just Mezcatlitan. The town is located on a round, artificial island in a lake bearing its same name in the Mexican state of Nayarit, close to the Pacific coast, home to just 800 people. The island city of Mezcatlitan floods periodically, during which boats are used to traverse the island, which is only about 1,100 feet across. The flooding, along with the dependence on boats overall, has earned this city the nickname La Venecia Mexicana, the Mexican Venice. From the air, the town looks like a compass rose with 2 main roads making the shape of a cross, dividing Mezcatlitan on north, south, and east-west axes, with similar roads radiating outward from the center. The island is home to a church, a hospital, a school, government offices, and many colorful houses. People on the island fish for a living or work plots of land on the mainland. The rich soils nearby yield fine tobacco prized throughout Mexico and other typical Mexican staple crops such as corn. There are very few towns and cities nearby, thus making Mezcatlitan somewhat remote, hard to access, and relatively unknown. Although the city is located 530 miles northwest of Mexico City, some scholars believe that this place has a direct connection to the pre-conquest Mexico City, the Aztec capital. And founded almost 1,000 years ago, many researchers theorize that Mezcatlitan may be the mythical point of origin of Aztlan. Scholars first took a look into the name of this new Scholars first look to the name of this new pueblo mágico, Mezcatlitan. The word itself includes 3 words or pieces of words that come from languages related to Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, or some of the Nahua derivatives. When taken apart, the word Mexica, Cali, and Titlan are combined together. So the word Mexica is what the Aztecs used to call themselves. Cali, in many Nahuatl languages and dialects and in other languages in ancient Mexico, always means house or building, and the suffix Titlan is used to denote a sense of place. So to many researchers, it literally means the place of the Aztec house. Seeing that this town on the small artificial island is well over 500 miles from the heart of the old Aztec Empire, it is curious that the builders may have left it is a curious clue that the builders may have left behind. And here's another depiction of that leaving. So it is a small island located in the middle of the water. And the indigenous core people were found living on the island town in the mid-1500s when the Spanish arrived in the area. The Coras spoke an Uto-Aztecan language similar to the Aztecs, although the area was far outside the bounds of the Aztec Empire. The early Spanish explorers who made it to this part of Nayarit documented the legend of the founding of the town of Mexcatlitan, which is eerily similar to the founding of the Aztec capital, although it happened centuries before. So here's the story. A tribe of wanderers arrived at the edge of the lake. On a rock outcrop in the middle of the lake, they saw a bright white heron standing there with a snake in its mouth. The Matic people took this as a sign from their main god to settle down and to end their generations of wandering. The people swam out to the rock outcrop and made a little settlement there, and over time, as the population grew, an artificial island expanded from this central core, giving us the round artificial island that exists today. As an aside, in the 1970s, an ancient stone slab was discovered nearby showing the scene of the heron with the snake in its mouth. That stone is now in a museum in Tepic, the capital of the state of Nayarit. When the wandering Aztecs arrived in the Valley of Mexico sometime in the early 1300s, they spotted an eagle with a snake in its mouth on a small island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. And that was a sign from their god to settle down there. So even though they're well over 500 miles away from each other and centuries apart, the similarities of the stories of the establishment of the settlements of Mextitlicacan and Tenochtitlan are much too similar to chalk up to mere chance. Could this be the mythical point of the origin of the Aztecs, the Aztlan of Aztec legend? Well, it makes me think, since their origin is that they were wandering already for a long time, the older legend says that they had to leave Aztlan and then wandered for a long time. So I don't know, maybe they found this place and were like, oh, this looks like home, let's settle here. Because if they've already been wandering for a long time, then they must have already left. But maybe there were multiple stages of wandering. Maybe they found this place, settled there, and then another cataclysm hit, and then that's when they moved down again to the lower part into Mexico, where Mexico City is now.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like that would be the lost continent, because it was like it was so small they had to like, make it artificial. Like basically like a floating man-made land. Yeah. To me, that doesn't sound like the original lost continent that we're speaking about. It could definitely be that these people like were originally kicked out, like the original story said, and their wandering left them wanting and yearning for a home, a place that's theirs, that they're not like moving into someone else's territory. And that's when they discovered this place and was like, okay, this is a sign, this is going to be our new territory for our people. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it sounds more plausible in my head. So, as we said, the Aztecs believed that they emerged from caves or a hollow earth centuries before they arrived in the Valley of Mexico to start their legendary empire. When they emerged out of what they called Chicomozotoc, or the place of the 7 caves, the Aztecs found themselves in a paradise they called Aztlan, which may mean the place of the white birds. This is interesting as it poses a connection to the story of the origin of the town of Mexicalititlan, with the white heron eating a snake on the rock outcrop in the middle of the lake. And we did also mention that in the myth, there was always mention of a lot of herons and ducks and birds and stuff like that. So Emperor Montezuma II, the famous Aztec ruler who invited conquistador Hernán Cortés to Tenochtitlan. We should watch El Dorado because Cortés is in that documentary, but it's another lost city. Damn it.
It's fine, just accept it.
Yeah, I'll accept it. Okay, it's another lost city, but it's like a Disney Pixar film. It's really fun.
You know I love a Disney.
Yeah, I loved that movie when I was younger. Yeah, so the expedition came back to the Aztec capital city after being away for about a year and had declared that they indeed discovered the true location of Aztlan. The exact location of this fabled place or any other details of this expedition do not survive to this day. We only know that the expedition went north and they encountered the mythical city in the lake. Could the group sent out by the Emperor Montezuma have visited Mexicalititlan in faraway Nayarit? Possible. The first person to make the Mexicalititlan connection was Alfredo Chavero, and he was a Mexican politician, and he published 18 books on Mexico's indigenous past. And at the time, he was considered to be one of the major defining works of pre-conquest in Mexico. Because of his broad knowledge of the cultures of ancient Mexico, Chavero was very familiar with the Aztlan legend of the Aztec origins. When he started researching the town of Mexicalititlan, he couldn't help but see the connections between this obscure, run-down fishing village in Nayarit and the stories of the mystical Aztec homeland. He wanted to devote more time to investigating Mexicalititlan, but could not. Few people at the time in Mexico shared Chavero's intense interest in the stories and legends of Mexico's ancient people, and no one investigated this further until 1940. So, yeah, there's possibility that it could be the ancient homeland, but to me, the way it's described in this, and it could be that it was the ancient homeland, it got destroyed, and maybe there was only like a little chunk of earth left. Who knows what the truth is, but this is apparently the closest sort of.
It definitely seems like the ancient homeland of the original people, of you know the ancestors.
But is it the mythical Aztlan?
I don't think it is. That's just from what I've heard. That's what I think. I think that that's where they've like reclaimed home.
Okay, guys, buckle in, because now that you've heard the theories and the myths of Aztlan, it's time to get into the craziest piece of research that I found and didn't expect to find. And this comes in the form of the mysterious Aztlan stones, which are part of a group of stones known as the Ojuelos Piedras, which have been analyzed by researchers and seem to describe the visit of beings that took place 27,000 years ago. The story of the discovery of the stones of Ojuelos has changed over time after the discovery of these ceramic artifacts made some years ago, where there are strange figures imprinted that initially were presumed to have been pre-Hispanic origins. The peculiarity of the figures is that they seem to show the natives of the region have had contact with extraterrestrials. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely did not.
Well, how old are they?
27,000 years. So they
And
were
where were they
carbon
found?
dated. They were found around around the area, some area in Mexico. I forgot. We might come into that information in a little bit. But before we get into where exactly they were found, the figures show faces of what is interpreted today as gray aliens, and as well as the shapes of flying saucers. The investigations by Garcia Sanchez and others helped to find more artifacts. And depending on the place you are looking at, the number of them varies from 300 to 3,000. And the identification of at least 3 skulls of presumably alien unknown species belong to the arid area of Ojuelos. Okay, so it was in Ojuelos within Mexico. The history that is part of the city of the Aztecs, and that is the mythical city of Aztlan. It is no coincidence that one of these stones, the famous Aztlan circular stone, is one of those pieces that seem to show alien faces in the middle of the Aztec calendar. And so far, it could just be a strange face from what we've seen. But as we go deeper and uncover more of the Aztlan stones, we'll begin to see a much clearer picture.
Is that what you're calling the face?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that could definitely be stretching a bit.
Yeah, so this could be stretching, is what I'm saying.
Because it could easily be like a bridge, the middle of a bridge.
Well, yeah, there looks like a sun at the top of the head. Big eyes or leaves.
To me, it looks like the sun coming over a bridge that has like a middle pillar. But no, I'm down for the alien. And
we'll keep going. We'll show you more pictures. And a lot of these pictures have been repressed, but there are some that are still surviving. So considering that there are 3,000 stones, each depicting similar things, Ojuelos was a very crowded area of different cultures in arid America and the Mesoamericas, such as the Sioux, Cheyenne, Hopi, Maya, Mexica, Olmechi, Teotihuacan, Mixtec, Huastec, and Chichimec. Here's another one.
That definitely looks like a face now because you've got the lips.
Yeah, you've definitely got So, according to reports, the statuettes were analyzed with carbon-14 methods, reaching the conclusion that they date back to at least 27,000 years ago. At the beginning, social networks as well as the local newspapers were the only ones who talked about these ceramic figures that showed drawings of the alien contact. After the analysis, the Mexican ufologist Jaime Maussan presented a special in his Tercer Milenio program, where the Austrian researcher Klaus Dona and the theoretical physicist of the scientific resonance project Nassim Haramein spoke and commented on the investigations of the Ojuelos stones that were shown as an authentic mystery. And this one is one of the craziest ones. It depicts figures almost in astronomical outfits, like astronauts.
Yeah.
You have an obvious helmet here with some tubes, and they've got wings on their back.
Much cooler than the astronauts we have in our day.
Yeah.
They got wings, they got like propellers on the back of their head or something. They've got a little seat.
Yeah. They're carrying something. I don't know what that... It looks like a figure with a head and a body that they're holding over their heads.
Very interesting.
So after a short period of analysis and research, the Mexican government decided to make known to the public several archaeological objects, including the stones of Ojuelos, which precisely describe an extraterrestrial contact that took place 20,000 years ago. In support of this, investigative journalist Jaime Maussan recalled that all of this is connected with the discovery of the alien mummies of Nazca in Peru, and we did do an episode on some of the cone-headed beings within Peru. But here is another also really crazy stone, and it's almost undeniable what the heck is going on. So here you have...
definitely has that cone head vibe.
He's got a big head, big eyes.
Definitely looks like a grey alien.
Definitely looks like a grey alien. And he looks to be in this little seat spaceship controlling something. And Yeah, it's crazy, right? 27,000 years old these are.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how little, like how I've never heard about these.
Yeah,
you know?
but also like we're told that civilization doesn't go back that far, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, well, that's not a carving done by hunter and gatherers. You know, that's took some thought.
Yeah.
To even create that, let alone, you know, the visual itself.
Yeah, so there's such a cool imagery. The faces of the alien mummies are identical to the drawings found in the ceramics of Ojuelos.
We haven't done a video on these.
Oh no, we haven't done on these mummies. No.
Maybe.
Well, I have talked about that they found a lot of like cone-headed mummies, but these guys look really small. I'll definitely look into this. And yeah, so even the first contact stones show the same type of great beings that make contact with the Mayan people. So the mysterious Aztec stones show, these faces of what we could call the great aliens. And here we're getting into some of the archaeological finds, and this person is holding something in their hands. And as we go closer, we find a strange looking skull with giant eye sockets that are diagonal.
What the hell?
And, we've talked about these alien skulls of before.
We didn't mention this skull.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's once again got these strange eyes. This one doesn't have any horns or those protrusions in the head.
Is that its mouth?
That would, I think, be either where the spine goes in.
Okay.
It doesn't have a jaw that we can see, but maybe it's lost its jaw.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the back of some sort of jaw bone here, but the front part of the face here is missing because that would be the hole where the spinal column would go. And as you can see, it's an upright spinal column, so it shows that this being was walking on two legs. And yeah.
So they're saying that is also 27. Like you skipped past the text, but is that text underneath that skull?
Yeah, I'm trying to see. It just
what does it say under
the text
skull?
says that according to researchers, the statuettes were analyzed using carbon analysis and are at least 27,000 years old.
They're as old as the artwork.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that could very well be. And go back to the picture of her hand holding it.
It's very small.
So it's quite small. It's
a
small being.
It's about half the size of a human head.
But then also humans have only got bigger. Humans used to be a lot smaller.
Not that small.
No, not that small.
I mean, unless we're talking about those pygmy people and those hobbits.
Which we also did an episode on. It's the Are Hobbits Real episode.
Yeah.
So they're quite small, which we know the Zetas, the grey aliens, they are meant to be really small, right? Aren't they?
Yeah.
What, 3 feet and how tall?
So,
about a metre tall, apparently.
Yeah. But so far, Mexico is one of the only states where extraterrestrial contacts have been confirmed on the state level. The state has confirmed that there has been some sort of ET contact. But what is very interesting is that the ancient people of the Mayan myths spoke of a type of being called the Alux. The Alux or the Alux, and they were believed to inhabit the forests and mountains of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. They were apparently mischievous and enjoyed playing pranks on humans, but they could also be helpful if they were appeased with offerings and prayers. Could these be the ancient gods or beings that led the Mexican people at one point or another? because very interestingly is that there is one legend associated with the Alux, and it says that they were responsible for building the ancient pyramids of the Maya. So again, in ancient Egypt, there's myth that the beings of Atlantis, Thoth the Atlantean, was the one, he was an advanced being, different from human, and he was the one who created the pyramids in in Egypt. And now here we have another account of the Alux, and they were a different kind of being, and they were always depicted as these small beings. And I have a couple photos of the Alux, and I think here's one. So these are the Alux. And I think another one here. And what's this one?
Yeah, there's angel astronauts.
Yeah. And again, we're seeing these. So these are part of the stone collection. We're seeing these vertical eyes. This being again, he was holding up the being, but it's very Egyptian. Yeah. Doesn't it look super Egyptian? It looks like Isis, but look what she has over her face. It looks like a glass dome around her face. And then we have the Eye of Horus here from 27,000-year-old stones found in Mexico. It's crazy. And here's another one. It's an Ankh.
Yeah.
It's a symbol of the Ankh with a different, spiral here. But it's the Ankh. And here's some sort of animal-headed being. And we have a sarcophagus-looking thing with these strange symbols written in the stone.
Yeah, that look like hieroglyphics.
And then here we have a being with these large
alien
eyes again. It's crazy.
Yeah,
and
fascinating.
And here again, it looks very Egyptian in the style and depiction. It's very different from the Aztec and Mayan stuff. The Aztec and Mayan stuff is amazing as well, but they have a very different art style.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this not being able to see the images, it's basically like those typical kind of Egyptian hieroglyphics and art that you see in the pyramids, but the faces seem to be very alien, with the big alien eyes, or a spaceship, or with the astronaut glass over their faces.
And you can see here it's very pharaoh looking, but the eyes are different. The eyes are big, and
the symbolism is very Egyptian.
And here we have a skull, and again with the very big eyes. And what was this picture? Oh, another strange finding within this. This one looks like some sort of animal. But it has this crazy bone protrusion. So it could, since these are 27,000 years old, this could be some sort of ancient animal that's gone extinct. But
it looks
very
so funny,
it's
doing some weird
it does look like a dinosaur,
like a duck.
Like a duck dinosaur.
Duck lips.
Yeah. But it was said that the legend goes that the Maya people were struggling to construct the massive stone structures and were falling behind schedule, and the Alux took pity on the Maya and offered to help them build the pyramids, but only if they were given offerings, and offerings were made to them. The Alux were said to work at night, using their supernatural powers to move the massive stones into place with ease. So again, we're having another account of levitation moving the stones. And that they would also use their powers to create intricate carvings and decorations on the pyramid walls. And the Alec would demand offerings of food and drink, and the Maya would leave offerings at the base of the pyramids to appease them. Some variations of the legend say that the Alux were actually the ones who taught the Maya how to build the pyramids, passing on their knowledge and skills to the human builders. Others say that the Alux were simply helping out of kindness and compassion for the struggling Maya. But according to the old legend, the Aluxes are older than the Mayan people. They are primal beings who built the big cities, and they worked very quickly in the dark because the sun had not yet appeared. So those are the legends, and just very cool that it's possible that they were living amongst another race, and you kind of see these similarities through a lot of different ancient cultures. But that these, that potentially Aztlan was a city shared with these extraterrestrial beings in a state of a golden age.
Yeah. That's probably the most interesting images I've seen, and especially that they go back that far. It's very interesting and crazy that this is the first time that we've seen them.
I know. It's ridiculous, and it shows how repressed they've been. And I literally, it's so hard to find other images. These are the same ones that keep appearing, but they said there were
30,000 or something.
303,000 they said.
Oh right, okay.
But you can only find a handful, of 6 to 10, 15 images. And I was looking around, and all of them were just showing the same images, and it was actually only it was the same article repeated over and over again in different websites. So it was almost like a lot of it was just there were so few pickings to choose from, and it was published in local newspapers at the time of the findings, and there were even said that farmers had been finding these stones for 80 years before the first researcher came and started making a big deal out of it. They were just we found these. And there's tribes today, Native American tribes today, that still claim they have contact with extraterrestrials. And you can even go and visit these people today, and they will tell you the stories. And I need to remember the name, but so...
Yeah, it just seems to be that same old story of the archaeologists wanting to push one type of narrative, and that's how stuff like this just, it doesn't get the research, it gets suppressed, it's not at the forefront because I don't know why. I guess it's because they don't want to be proven wrong on other finds that they've published and what they're teaching in schools. It's my only
I think it's too out there for a lot of people to actually wrap their minds around. So it's just when sometimes you're faced with information or knowledge that throws you so far out of your comfort zone, you put an automatic defense mechanism.
They're trying to push a narrative of human civilization has only been around for this long. When you're looking at images like that, it completely disproves that notion. That's not true, because that is a civilized people that have created that. That's not the works of a hunter and gatherer.
And when we speak of the current age, religion has tried to do this. They suppress information for their own gains because they don't want people to realize that the religion and the ideas that they've been putting forward are not true in a lot of ways. And the same thing is the new religion is science, and this science has their own story of history, and they don't like to stray from it. And if you try to question or believe in things outside of this story we've been told, you're disproven or just thrown out of the community or seen as a crazy person.
It's so frustrating, but that's why we're here. Because we're here to look into these things and share what we know, just as you're here because you're interested in it, and hopefully more articles will come out about this, more money is put into it, because it all comes down to money, this stuff. So as long as more money can get behind the research of things like this, then we're going to find out more.
I would love to visit this place and speak to
Natives.
people and the farmers who have found these stones, and because I reckon there's a lot of people who have just had these stones in their family because they found it in their land or something. So it could be possible that place was the origin, or at least a big civilization at one point. Or else how did those stones get there?
Well, yeah, could have been created by the people who were moved on from the mainland.
That's true.
But I think that is everything for this episode. Has been so interesting, and nice little surprise there at the end.
Yeah, I found it just as I was I was typing more like Aztlan mysteries and stuff, and then I just found this one article, the Aztlan stones, and then I'm very happy I stumbled across it, because there's a sea of other information about this stuff, and to just find this little gem was great. So
well done. This won't be the last of our Lost Continent episodes. We have a few more planned, because there are a few.
If you like this episode, then definitely let us know. Give us a like, and that'll show us that you want us to do more of these episodes. And there are definitely more Lost Continents than you think, and we would love to go and explore and dive into those.
And if you got this far, be a good time to tell you to subscribe. Definitely subscribe to our YouTube, to our audio platforms that we're on, and not miss another episode. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you so much, and we will catch you in the next one.